Welcome back. In this episode, we're covering tree risk, which accounts for about 11% of the Certified Arborist exam. This domain is all about decision-making. The exam isn't asking whether trees are dangerous. It's testing whether you can assess likelihood of failure, identify targets, communicate risk, and recommend appropriate mitigation. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how arborists evaluate tree risk and how the exam expects you to think through risk scenarios. Let's start with the most important idea in this domain. Tree risk is about probability and consequences, not certainty. No arborist predicts failure with absolute certainty. The exam rewards answers that reflect reasonable judgment, not fear-based reactions. Roles and responsibilities in tree risk management. Tree risk management involves multiple parties. The exam clearly distinguishes between tree owners or managers who ultimately accept risk assessors who evaluate conditions, and arborists who recommend management options. A frequent exam theme is communication. Arborists must clearly explain risk to people with different backgrounds and levels of understanding. If a question involves responsibility, remember, arborists inform and recommend. They don't make final acceptance decisions for the owner. Types of tree risk. The exam tests several categories of risk. These include whole tree failure, tree part failure, such as branches, trip and slip hazards, risks from leaves, fruit, or flowers, property damage, visibility issues, power lines, and wildlife interactions. Not all risk involves tree failure. If a question mentions sidewalks, fruit drop, or blocked sightlines, it's still a tree risk issue. Levels of tree risk assessment. You must recognize the 3 levels of assessment: limited visual assessment, basic assessment, and advanced assessment. The Certified Arborist exam focuses heavily on limited visual assessments, what you can observe from the ground without specialized equipment. A key exam concept, the level of assessment should match the site conditions, targets, and consequences of failure. Target analysis. Risk cannot exist without a target. Targets includes people, vehicles, structures, and the frequency the area is occupied. A tree with defects but no target represents lower risk than a healthy tree over a playground. If a question mentions targets, the exam is telling you to factor them into your recommendation. Site and tree analysis. Risk assessment includes evaluating site conditions like soil, slope, and exposure, tree conditions like structure, defects, and health. Common defects tested include cracks and splits, decay, codominant stems, root plate issues, and excessive lean. The exam often tests your ability to recognize obvious defects and not hidden decay. Tree stability. Stability is a recurring exam concept. Root damage, soil saturation, construction disturbance, and decay can all reduce stability. If a question mentions recent changes, such as trenching or storms, stability should be a major consideration. Risk mitigation measures. Once risk is identified, the arborist recommends mitigation options. These fall into 2 broad categories: tree-based measures, pruning, structural support systems, and crown reduction; target-based measures, relocating targets, restricting access, and changing site use. On the exam, removal is rarely the first option unless risk cannot be reasonably mitigated. Inspection intervals. Risk is not static. The exam expects you to recognize when ongoing monitoring is appropriate, and inspection intervals should be adjusted based on risk level. A tree with known defects near a high-use area requires more frequent inspections than a low-risk tree in a natural area. Exam focus callouts. Watch for these patterns: risk confused with tree health, defects described without targets, removal suggested too quickly, failure to match assessment level to site conditions, communication responsibilities ignored. If the answer balances observation, targets, and reasonable mitigation, it's usually correct. Rapid review summary. Tree risk is about likelihood and consequences. Risk requires a target. Assessment level must match site conditions. Obvious defects matter most on the exam. Mitigation includes tree-based and target-based options. Monitoring and communication are part of risk management. That's tree risk. If you can slow down, identify targets, recognize defects, and recommend reasonable mitigation, you'll handle this domain confidently on the exam. Next up, we'll move into safe work practices, the highest weighted domain, where knowledge meets personal responsibility. Thanks for listening to the Arborist-podcast. Let's keep building your arborist knowledge one domain at a time.